Montecito, California. The 23rd of January, 2026. Harry once declared, "Meghan gets whatever she wants." But now, after Meghan's betrayal, Harry calls it a mistake. Harry blames the royal family for not fulfilling their family responsibilities, while Princess Anne declares it selfishness. Should we sympathize with a deceived Harry, or should we criticize a prince who refuses to take responsibility for his own life? Harry has leveled a radical new accusation. The British monarchy is to blame for the current collapse of his personal and professional life because they failed to stop him from marrying Meghan Markle. This is a breathtaking departure from the man who in 2018 famously told palace staff, "What Meghan wants, Meghan gets." At the time, Harry was the primary driver of the wedding's breakneck speed, pushing past the traditional vetting protocols and ignoring the quiet reservations of his brother, Prince William. But today, faced with a career that has hit a Hollywood ceiling and a marriage under the intense pressure of unverified past secrets, Harry is lashing out at the men in gray suits. His argument that the institution, his father, the late Queen, and the royal advisors failed in their duty of care by not acting as the traditional gatekeepers of the bloodline. He now claims that his immaturity and trauma-induced state at the time should have been met with firm institutional guidance, rather than the catastrophic green light that led to the St. George's Chapel ceremony. Insiders describe Harry's current mental state as one of aggressive victimhood. He reportedly views his current professional stagnation, the cooling of major production deals, and the waning global interest in the Sussex brand as a direct consequence of a marriage that he now characterizes as hasty and ill-advised. By blaming the monarchy for allowing the marriage, Harry is attempting to absolve himself of the agency he so fiercely defended during Meghan. He argues that the palace's failure to conduct a forensic, psychological, and historical audit of his future wife has left him shackled to a history he didn't sign up for. This resentment has reached a boiling point due to the re-emergence of Trevor Angleson, Meghan's first official husband, in the global discourse. While the public has long known of Angleson as the starter marriage that ended with a ring sent back via FedEx, new unofficial rumors have begun to circulate regarding a period of Meghan's life even further back, her time at Northwestern University. The drama of the decade centers on the speculative claim that Meghan's union with Trevor was not her second, but her third marriage, following a secret annulled union at age 19. The most explosive element driving Harry into this state of fury is the abandoned child theory. For weeks leading up to January 23rd, digital forums and tabloid fringes have been all right with the claim that a daughter was born from this alleged teenage marriage and subsequently placed for adoption. While these claims remain unverified and largely dismissed by mainstream legal experts, their mere existence in the public sphere has acted as a moral bomb within the Sussex household. Harry's reaction to these rumors has not been one of unified defense, as it was in the past. Instead, he has turned his ire inward toward Meghan and outward toward the palace. He is reportedly incandescent with rage, not just at the possibility of being lied to, but at the fact that the royal vetting process, a system he once decried as intrusive, didn't save him from himself. He now views the 8-month whirlwind courtship, which the palace facilitated with a $32 million wedding, as a dereliction of duty by his family. To understand Harry's current Owen Trotch resentment, one must look at the timeline. Harry and Meghan met in July 2016 and were married by May 2018. In the world of royal marriages, this is considered an accelerated track. Harry now claims that the gray suits were so terrified of being labeled unwelcoming or biased that they bypassed the deep tissue background checks usually reserved for those entering the direct line of succession. He is effectively saying that the monarchy traded his long-term stability for a short-term PR win, says a source close to the California circle. Harry feels that because he was the spare, the institution didn't care if his life was built on a foundation of secrets. He sees his current failure in Hollywood as the natural endgame of a brand built on a lie, and he wants his father and the institution to take the blame for the orientation they never gave him. This shift in Harry's personality from the doting husband to the embittered son, blaming his orientation and upbringing for his poor choices, sets the stage for a monumental confrontation. As the world watches the Sussexes fracture, the monarchy is no longer staying silent. But the response isn't coming from the king. It is coming from the most disciplined member of the family, the Princess Royal, Anne. While Prince Harry's internal meltdown fuels the fire in Montecito, The sparks are being struck thousands of miles away by a man who was once the primary architect of Meghan Markle's life, Trevor Engelson. To understand the gravity of the current crisis, one must look past the starter marriage labels and recognize Engelson for who he is. A powerhouse Hollywood producer and literary manager with a net worth exceeding $10 million and a reputation for being one of the industry's most disciplined survivors. The architect of a former life. Trevor Engelson is not an ordinary person. As the founder of Underground Films, he has produced major works like Snowfall and Remember Me. He is a man who understands how to build a brand and how to deconstruct one. His relationship with Meghan began in 2004, a decade-long saga that saw her rise from a struggling actress to a series regular on Suits. They married in a 4-day celebration in Jamaica in 2011, only for the marriage to dissolve by 2013, in a manner that reportedly left Engelson blindsided and devastated with his wedding rings returned via a cold FedEx envelope. For years, Engelson has maintained a dignified, almost eerie silence. He moved on, married heiress Tracy Kurland, and built a private, successful life. However, as of January 2026, that silence has been replaced by a shadow campaign of information. The rumor mill, intensified by recent digital forensic leaks, suggests that Engelson is no longer willing to be the ghost in the machine. The drama centers on a specific period of time that predates Engelson himself. Meghan's years at Northwestern University, 1999-2003. The Northwestern third marriage allegation. The core of the current high-stakes drama is the Northwestern secret. Unofficial reports and social media dosas have alleged that Meghan's marriage to Trevor was not her second, but her third. The claim suggests that at age 19, a young and impulsive Meghan entered into a legal union with a man named Joseph Goldberg Giuliano, a figure who has recently resurfaced in the darker corners of investigative tabloids. According to these unverified allegations, this first marriage was either swiftly annulled or scrubbed from public record through high-level legal maneuvers, possibly involving the groom's wealthy family who supposedly rejected the union. If proven, this would mean that the Duchess of Sussex entered the British royal family on a false premise. For Prince Harry, who pridefully defended his wife's status as a divorce to a skeptical queen, the revelation that there was yet another layer of hidden history is a psychological blow he seems unable to process. The abandoned child theory. Fact or friction? Even more radioactive than the secret marriage is the accompanying theory regarding an abandoned child. The narrative circulating through various YouTube exposés and dossier leaks suggests that from this alleged one-year-old union, a daughter was born. The theory posits that in the pursuit of a skyrocketing Hollywood career, the child was placed in an orphanage or given up for adoption, effectively being erased from Meghan's official biography. Names like Noel, the daughter of Samantha Markle, have been dragged into the speculation, with some theorists suggesting she is actually Meghan's biological child, being raised by her half-sister. While there is no credible evidence, birth certificate, or photographic proof to support this claim, its viral nature has created a moral crisis for the Sussex brand. Why now? The Yacht Girl and the TIG raw data. Engelson's alleged dossier is said to contain more than just marriage rumors. It reportedly includes digital archives, raw unedited drafts from the TIG, Meghan's former lifestyle blog, that show a woman meticulously pruning her history as early as 2014. The yacht past. Allegations of Meghan's presence on high-end luxury vessels in the Mediterranean, suggesting her rise through social circles was far more transactional than the feminist narrative she projects. Witness testimony. Statements from former friends who claimed to have been present during the Northwestern years and were allegedly sworn to secrecy. For Trevor Engelson, this isn't about a payday. In the cutthroat world of 2026 Hollywood, he is more successful than ever. Instead, the whispers suggest this is a reckoning of truth. As the man who knew her before she was a duchess, his potential cooperation with palace investigators, or even his passive allowance of this information to surface, is the ultimate revenge for a man who felt used and discarded. As these allegations reached the gates of Buckingham Palace in mid-January, the institution had to decide, do they protect the spare and his wife, or do they protect the crown? The answer came not from the king, but from his sister, whose icy resolve would soon set a new standard for royal accountability. Part 3. The Montecito Meltdown, Harry's Fragile Psyche, and the War of Recrimination. As the calendar turned toward late January 2026, the pristine, salt-aired tranquility of Montecito was shattered. Behind the reinforced gates of the Sussex estate, a psychological drama was unfolding that far surpassed any scripted Hollywood production. Prince Harry, a man who had staked his entire global reputation and his relationship with his blood relatives on the absolute truth of his wife's narrative, found himself standing on shifting sand. The re-emergence of Trevor Angleson's shadow and the viral spread of the Northwestern secret didn't just threaten Meghan's brand, they threatened Harry's very sanity, the anatomy of an explosion. Insiders close to the household described the period between January 15th and January 20th as a marathon of confrontation. Harry's temperament, historically described as volatile and defensive, shifted into a state of acute paranoia. Reports have surfaced of a massive late-night argument that echoed through the halls of their mansion, a confrontation where Harry reportedly demanded the unvarnished forensic truth about the 1999-2003 period. Unlike previous crises where the couple presented a unified U.S. against the world front, this time the U.S. was fracturing. Harry, a man who lost his mother at a young age and has spent decades battling the trauma of being lied to by the press and the palace, allegedly felt the ultimate sting of betrayal. To discover that the woman he sacrificed his birthright for might have hidden a previous marriage and potentially a firstborn child was a moral earthquake that leveled his worldview. From protector to prosecutor, in a tragic irony, Harry's reaction was not to hide, but to lash out at the very woman he once claimed to save. Witnesses via leaked staff accounts describe Harry as incandescent with rage, pacing the grounds and refusing to engage in the PR spin Meghan reportedly attempted to deploy. For the first time in their decade-long relationship, Harry's protective shield vanished. He didn't just question her. He reportedly began his own internal investigation, reaching out to old contacts in the UK security services to ask why the vetting hadn't caught these discrepancies. His behavior toward Meghan shifted from doing to avoidant. He was seen spending hours alone in his study or driving aimlessly through the Santa Barbara hills. When he did engage, it was to level a devastating accusation. "I gave up my country for a version of you that might not exist." The shift to institutional negligence. As the weight of the allegations became too much for Harry to bear alone, his psychological defense mechanism kicked in. He needed someone else to blame. In a series of frantic, emotional emails sent to the king's private secretary and even to his brother's camp, which went ignored by William, Harry pivoted his anger toward the British monarchy. His new truth was a radical one. The royal family and the men in gray suits were responsible for his current misery because they failed to protect him from his own impulsivity. Harry's argument, as summarized by sources close to him, is that the palace's vetting process was criminally negligent. He claims that in 2017 he was a traumatized, directionless young man who should have been guided by a firm paternal institution. Instead, he argues the palace was so desperate to avoid the racist or unwelcoming labels that they rushed the 8-month courtship and greenlit a marriage built on omissions. Harry's Awantra resentment is now focused on the idea that the monarchy threw him to the wolves by allowing him to marry into a history he didn't fully understand. He views his current career failures, the cancelled deals, the public ridicule, and the brand rot as the inevitable result of a faulty orientation provided by the crown. He is effectively suing the institution of his birth for failing to be his parent when he needed the most. The daughter shadow, the ultimate moral bomb. The specific allegation of an abandoned child has proven to be the most destructive element. Harry, who has built his entire post-royal identity on being the ultimate father and protector of Archie and Lilith, reportedly cannot reconcile his values with the possibility of a discarded firstborn. The psychological toll is immense. Harry is currently navigating a minefield where every nurturing speech Meghan gives feels to him like a potential act of hypocrisy. He is trapped in a cage of secrets, and his only escape is to blame the system. He believes that if the palace had done its job, he would have known the truth, and he wouldn't be stranded in California with a past he can't defend. This victim narrative, too, has left the royal family in a precarious position. While Harry waits for an apology or an admission of vetting failure, the palace has decided that the time for quiet diplomacy is over. As Harry's anger boiled over in Montecito, a very different kind of energy was gathering in London, an energy embodied by the Princess Royal, who was about to deliver a masterclass in accountability. As the chaotic fallout from Montecito threatened to breach the gates of Buckingham Palace, the British monarchy chose its most formidable weapon to restore order, Princess Anne. On the 21st of January 2026, acting as the unofficial enforcer of the House of Windsor, the Princess Royal delivered a response that was as icy as it was legally surgical. Known for her non-nonsense approach and her unwavering commitment to the institution, Anne's intervention marked the end of the palace's period of quiet diplomacy. The legal shield, defending the sanctity of the Union, Princess Anne's primary objective was to decapitate the growing legal and constitutional panic. In a series of briefings to high royal correspondents, the palace via Anne's office made a definitive statement regarding the legitimacy of the Sussex marriage, the age of consent. Anne addressed the Northwestern marriage rumors with blunt pragmatism. She noted that even if the allegations of a secret marriage at age 19 were true, Meghan Markle was legally an adult. In the eyes of both British and American law, she had the right to enter into a contract, the status of the union. Most crucially, Anne clarified that at the time of the 2018 royal wedding, both Harry and Meghan were legally single. The palace's vetting services had confirmed their marital status as of 2017. Therefore, the marriage at St. George's Chapel remains 100% legal and binding. The deceit argument. Anne effectively neutralized Harry's vetting failure claim by stating that the Crown's duty is to verify legal eligibility, not to conduct a moral or spiritual audit of an individual's teenage years. By doing so, she placed the burden of truth and trust squarely back onto the couple, labeling any omissions as a private moral matter rather than an institutional failure. The oatmeal rebuttal dismantling Harry's victimhood. The most stinging part of Anne's response was her direct critique of Harry's Owen Trash resentment. Harry's claim that the royal family should have stopped him from a hasty marriage was met with a rare display of public royal irritation. Anne reportedly characterized Harry's current stance as entirely emotional and devoid of maturity. She reminded the public and Harry himself that he was a man in his 30s when he met Meghan, not a child. She pointed out the hypocrisy of a man who fought so fiercely for his independence and autonomy during Meghan, only to now claim he was a traumatized victim who needed the men in gray suits to save him from his own romantic choices. The Crown provided a 32 million wedding, the blessing of the sovereign and the highest honors of the land, a source close to Anne leaked. To suggest now that the family is to blame for a lack of direction is not just ungrateful. It is a fundamental betrayal of the dignity Harry once claimed to possess, a command to parenthood, the Archie and Leet mandate. In a moment that showcased her role as the aunt and grandmother of the family, Anne shifted from legalism to moral authority. She leveled a devastating critique against the abandonment of responsibility currently being displayed in Montecito. Anne expressed a deep, visceral heartache and anger toward both Harry and Meghan for allowing their personal drama of secrets to overshadow the lives of their children, Archie and Leet. She condemned the way the couple has let emotion dominate responsibility, effectively accusing them of using their children as PR shields while their marriage fractures. Her command was simple and haunting. You brought these children into the world as a distillation of love. You must now show them that love through stability, not through a public war of recrimination. Anne's intervention suggested that the royal family is far more concerned about the psychological welfare of the two young Sussex children than they are about the brand rot of their parents. The warning to Trevor Engelson. Even the Hollywood ghost did not escape Anne's gaze. In a subtle but firm message delivered through diplomatic channels, Anne warned Trevor Engelson and any other parties involved in the dossier leaks. She cautioned against using innocent children as leverage in adult disputes. While the palace acknowledges the gravity of the allegations, Anne made it clear that the monarchy would not be a participant in a tabloid execution involving minors past or present. In a final, masterfully passive-aggressive stroke, Anne addressed the abandoned child rumor with a solution-oriented approach. She stated that if a third child from Meghan's past truly existed, then the Duchess, given her public image as a champion of motherhood and her immense personal wealth, should have the moral courage to take responsibility for her past. By saying this, Anne effectively called Meghan's bluff. She framed the truth not as a scandal to be hidden, but as a debt to be paid. This move by Anne was a strategic masterpiece. It offered a path to peace while simultaneously highlighting the massive discrepancy between Meghan's public persona and the allegations of her hidden history. As Anne's words echoed through the UK and into the halls of Montecito, the power dynamic shifted. The royal family was no longer the defendant in Harry's drama. They were the judge. However, this newfound clarity from Anne was about to trigger an internal explosion within the palace walls, this time from Queen Camilla. As the echoes of Princess Anne's masterclass in accountability reverberated through the global press, a new and unexpected front opened within the very heart of the British monarchy. While the public largely cheered Anne's no-nonsense dismantling of Harry's victimhood, the atmosphere inside the private apartments of Sandringham House turned radioactive. The source of this internal combustion, Queen Camilla. By late January 2026, the united front of the royal family was facing its most significant internal threat since the passing of the late Queen Elizabeth II. As a bitter ideological war erupted between the king's sister and the king's wife, Queen Camilla's reaction to Anne's public intervention was not one of support, but of deep, seething resentment. Sources close to the Queen consort describe her as incandescent with rage following Anne's remarks about moral courage, past marriages, and responsibility for children from previous unions. To the outside world, Anne was simply holding the Sussexes to account. To Camilla, Anne's words felt like a surgical strike against her own history. The friction is rooted in the stepmother dynamic. Camilla, a woman who famously navigated the treacherous waters of being the third person in a royal marriage, and who brought two children, Tom and Laura, from her previous marriage to Andrew Parker B.S., into the royal orbit, saw Anne's rhetoric as a thinly veiled critique of her own past. When Anne spoke of the duty of a mother to her past and the transparency required of those entering the direct line of succession, Camilla reportedly felt the Princess Royal was digging up the bones of the 1990s. Camilla's anger toward Anne is multifaceted. She reportedly views Anne's masterclass as an overreach, an attempt by the Princess Royal to position herself as the moral compass of the family, a role Camilla feels should be reserved for the sovereign and his consort. Insiders suggest that Camilla took personal offense at Anne's demand that Meghan take responsibility for her past if a third child exists. Camilla knows better than anyone the pain of being a blended royal, says a Hyla Palace source. She spent decades being vilified as the other woman. For Anne to use language that equates hidden pasts with moral failure felt to Camilla like a direct insult to the life she has built with Charles. She believes Anne is using the Sussex crisis to re-establish a higher moral standard that would by definition exclude or diminish people with complicated marital histories like herself. On the evening of the 22nd of January 2026, the tension reportedly boiled over during a private dinner at Sandringham. The king, already exhausted by Harry's Awandra, resentment from across the Atlantic, found himself caught in a crossfire between the two most powerful women in his life. Camilla allegedly accused Anne of being reckless and self-serving, arguing that by engaging directly with the rumors of a third child in secret marriages, Anne had given the Hollywood ghost, Trevor Engelson, exactly what he wanted: institutional recognition. Camilla's argument was that the palace should have maintained a wall of silence, and that by speaking out, Anne had validated the gossip and made it impossible for the king to ever reconcile with his son. Anne, true to her stoic nature, reportedly did not back down. She countered that the wall of silence had failed for 7 years, and that the crown's survival depended on cauterizing the wound. She allegedly told Camilla that the monarchy cannot be built on blended secrets, and that Harry's attempt to blame the institution for his own hasty choices required a firm public correction. This is not just a personal spat, it is a battle for the soul of the 21st century monarchy. The Anne faction believes in institutional integrity above all else. They argue that the Sussexes must be cut off legally and titularly to prevent the brand rot from spreading. They see the Trevor Engelson dossier as the nuclear option that provides the necessary legal grounds for the Titles Deprivation Act. The Camilla faction favors pragmatic preservation. Camilla is wary of any precedent that allows the monarchy to strip titles or investigate pasts, fearing that such a forensic culture could eventually be turned against other members of the family, including herself or the Prince of Wales's future. Caught in the middle of this war of the Windsors are the Prince and Princess of Wales. While William is known to be aligned in spirit with his Aunt Anne desiring a clean break from the Sussex drama to protect George, Charlotte, and Louis, he is also acutely aware of the need to support his father's marriage. The Camilla-Anne rift has created a poisonous atmosphere that has effectively paralyzed the palace's communication strategy. While Harry and Meghan fracture in California, the UK leadership is divided on how to handle the endgame. Camilla's fear that Anne is using the Sussexes to settle old scores has turned a celebrity scandal into a constitutional Cold War. As of January 23rd, the question remains, why is Camilla so protective of the silence? Some suggest it is because she understands the fragility of the narrative. If the public begins to accept that a royal spouse can have an entirely different life buried in the archives, the fairy tale is dead forever. Anne's insistence that the truth is the only thing that can't be reinvented is a direct challenge to the rebranding culture that both Meghan and, to an extent, Camilla have utilized. As the two women clash, the Hollywood ghost watches from afar, his dossier acting as the sword of Damocles over a house that is now divided against itself. The sun sets over the Pacific horizon in Montecito. But for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, the darkness feels internal and absolute. What began as a fairy tale marriage in 2018 has by early 2026 devolved into a geopolitical and domestic battlefield. The uncontested narrative, the idea that Harry and Meghan were the ultimate victims of a cold, archaic institution, has finally collapsed under the weight of its own secrets and the emergence of the Hollywood ghost Trevor Angleson. As of today, the unified front of Harry and Meghan exists only in pre-recorded press releases. Behind closed doors, the shift from a romantic alliance to a legalistic standoff is complete. Prince Harry's transition from protector to prosecutor has left Meghan Markle in a position she has never occupied, one where her powers of rebranding are ineffective. Harry's Oantra resentment has reached its terminal phase. He no longer sees the royal family as his enemy. He sees them as a failed safety net. His insistence that the palace is to blame for allowing his marriage is a desperate attempt to reclaim a sense of agency he feels he lost the moment he stepped onto that plane to Canada in 2020. The Northwestern secret and the specter of an abandoned child have turned his marriage into a crime scene of missing information. For a man who built his identity on the truth, discovering that his life may be built on a curated omission is a psychological death blow. The institutional reset, Anne's victory, and the path to deprivation. In London, the Anne doctrine has taken hold. Despite the internal friction with Queen Camilla, the Princess Royal has succeeded in changing the conversation by framing the Sussex crisis as a moral and parental failure rather than a royal scandal. She has stripped the couple of their victimhood status. The palace is now reportedly moving toward the nuclear option. With the evidence allegedly contained in Trevor Angleson's dossier, evidence of a prior legal union at age 19 that was never declared during the 2017 vetting, King Charles now has the fact-based basis required to act. Legal experts suggest that the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917 is no longer a theoretical threat. If the high-level deceit against the state can be proven, the king may be forced to perform an institutional reset, stripping the Sussexes of their titles, not out of spite, but to protect the integrity of the Crown's vetting standards. The most enduring impact of this January 2026 crisis is the royal family's refusal to be outsiders to the welfare of the children. Princess Anne's demand for responsibility over emotion has resonated with the British public. The monarchy has positioned itself as the defender of Archie, Lilith, and the potential third child, effectively shaming the Sussexes for letting their transactional pasts and current rages traumatize the next generation. Anne's message to Trevor Angleson was equally vital. The children are not collateral damage. By taking this stance, the monarchy has reclaimed the moral high ground, leaving Harry and Meghan to fight over the scraps of their brand in the California courts. Ultimately, the events leading up to the 23rd of January 2026 prove one fundamental truth. The past is a debt that eventually comes due. Meghan Markle's mastery of the rebrand has met its match in the forensic reality of the digital age and the silent memory of a husband who refused to stay a footnote. The gilded cage Harry once complained about has been replaced by a cage of secrets. As the dossier moves from the hands of Hollywood producers to the desks of royal lawyers, the world is watching the final act of a long-planned performance. For Harry, the road ahead is lonely. For the monarchy, it is a path of duty over family. And for Meghan, it is a confrontation with the one thing that cannot be edited: the truth. The era of the uncontested narrative is over. The truth is no longer what the Sussexes say it is. It is what the history books and the archives of Northwestern and Hollywood reveal it to be. The game is no longer about fame or titles. It is about the soul of an institution that has decided it will no longer be lied